stop chasing the person who keeps teaching you that your presence is optional. Ride that again. The moment you stop proving your worth to someone who refuses to see it, something incredible begins to happen. Not because they suddenly become a better person, not because life magically changes overnight, but because the energy shifts. The game changes. The balance of power moves back into your hands. Most people believe the way to keep someone's attention is to give them more of it. More messages, more explanations, more chances, more forgiveness, more patience. But the truth is often the exact opposite. People rarely appreciate what they never have to earn. If someone knows you'll always answer first, always apologize first, always wait, always forgive, and always stay no matter how little they give you, what reason do they have to change? And that's why ignoring someone who has taken you for granted isn't about revenge. It's about respect. Respect for yourself. The biggest mistake people make after being ignored is trying harder. They send another text. They make another call. They post something hoping to get noticed. They wonder if they said something wrong. They replay every conversation in their mind searching for answers. Meanwhile, the other person is learning one dangerous lesson. They are learning that your attention has no value because it never stops flowing. Think about that. Anything that is unlimited eventually becomes invisible. Air is priceless, yet most people never notice it because it's always there. Attention works the same way. When your attention is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it loses its emotional impact. That's why silence speaks louder than endless words. Not because silence hurts, because silence forces people to think. When your messages disappear, when your constant reassurance disappears, when your emotional availability disappears, the empty space begins asking questions that your words never could. Why aren't they calling? What changed? Did I lose them? Suddenly, the person who never valued your presence starts noticing your absence. But here's the part most people get wrong. Ignoring someone only works when it's real. If you're secretly checking your phone every 30 seconds, if you're posting stories hoping they'll watch, if you're waiting for them to make the first move, then you're not ignoring them. You're performing. Real indifference isn't something you show, it's something you become. That transformation starts the moment you realize your happiness cannot depend on someone else's attention. Because attention is temporary, respect lasts. Many people confuse love with constant access. They think if someone truly loves them, they'll always be available. Real love doesn't need constant chasing. Healthy relationships don't survive because one person keeps running after the other. They survive because both people choose each other repeatedly. If you're the only one choosing, you're not building a relationship. You're carrying one, and eventually the weight becomes unbearable. Imagine carrying another adult on your shoulders every single day. At first, you think it's manageable. You tell yourself they're just tired. They've been busy. They're stressed. They'll eventually start walking beside you, but weeks become months. Months become years. Nothing changes. The only thing changing is you. You're becoming exhausted, emotionally drained, mentally confused, spiritually empty. That's what happens when you keep investing in someone who stopped investing in you long ago. One day, you wake up and realize you spent more time trying to convince someone to love you than actually loving yourself. That realization changes everything, because confidence begins where desperation ends. People are naturally drawn toward those who value themselves, not because confidence is loud, because confidence is peaceful. Confident people don't beg. They don't compete for affection. They don't fight to be chosen. They know that if someone cannot recognize their value, that's information, not rejection. There's a huge difference. Rejection says, I'm not enough. Information says, we're not aligned. One destroys confidence, The other protects it. The strongest people understand this. They stop taking every disappointment personally. Instead of asking, why wasn't I enough? They ask, why was I trying to convince someone who had already shown me their answer? Actions always speak before words. Someone who wants you makes time. Someone who values you communicates. Someone who respects you doesn't keep you guessing every day. Yes, everyone gets busy. Everyone has responsibilities, but nobody is too busy to consistently show effort toward what truly matters. When someone cares, you don't have to decode mixed signals. You don't need detective skills. You don't need to analyze every text message. Consistency removes confusion. Confusion usually appears where commitment is missing. That's why emotional peace is one of the greatest signs you found the right people. The wrong people make you question yourself. The right people remind you who you are. Stop confusing emotional chaos with passion. Drama is not love. Anxiety is not romance. Walking on eggshells isn't chemistry. Love should strengthen you, not slowly erase your identity. If every day feels like you're fighting to earn basic attention, you've already accepted less than you deserve. And the hardest truth is this. People treat you according to the standards you consistently accept, not the standards you talk about, the standards you live. Every time you tolerate disrespect without consequence, every time you reward inconsistency with more effort, every time you ignore your own boundaries to keep someone comfortable, you're teaching them exactly how little they have to do to keep you around. That's why change starts with you, not them. The moment you stop rewarding behavior that hurts you, everything begins to shift. Some people will rise to meet your new standards. Others will disappear. Both outcomes are victories because anyone who leaves when you start respecting yourself was never benefiting your life. They were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. The greatest comeback isn't making someone regret losing you. It's becoming someone who no longer needs their validation to feel complete. And that's the moment your real power begins. The moment you stop making someone the center of your world, you begin discovering the person who should have been there all along. You. That is the shift nobody talks about. Most people think ignoring someone is about creating distance. It's about creating clarities. Distance simply gives clarity room to breathe. When you're constantly chasing someone, your emotions become louder than your judgment. You excuse behavior you would never accept from anyone else. You overlook disrespect because you're focused on potential instead of reality. You keep saying, maybe they're just confused. Maybe they need time. Maybe tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow keeps looking exactly like yesterday. At some point, hope becomes a prison. Not because hope is bad, but because misplaced hope keeps you waiting for someone who has already shown you where you stand. The strongest people don't ignore red flags because they're in love. They pay attention to patterns. Patterns never lie. Anyone can have one bad day. Anyone can forget to call once. Anyone can make a mistake. But repeated behavior isn't a mistake anymore. It's a decision. And every decision tells you something. The question is whether you're willing to listen. Too many people hear promises instead of watching actions. They celebrate words while ignoring reality. I'll change. I've been busy. I've just had a lot on my mind. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. But real change never introduces itself with speeches. It introduces itself with consistency. You don't need someone to convince you they've changed. You'll see it. You'll feel it. You'll never have to chase proof. That's why your peace should never depend on someone else's promises. Promises can be broken. Character is much harder to fake. Here's something powerful to remember. People reveal their priorities by what they repeatedly protect. If they protect their time, but never share it with you, if they protect their energy, but only expect yours, if they protect their peace while constantly disturbing yours, You're learning exactly where you rank in their life. Believe what you see, not what you wish. Ignoring someone who undervalues you is not emotional manipulation. It's emotional maturity. It's refusing to participate in a cycle that keeps breaking your heart. You don't owe endless access to someone who keeps misusing it. Ride that again. Access is earned, not demanded. Your attention is valuable. Your kindness is valuable. Your loyalty is valuable. Stop handing priceless things to people who treat them like they're free. One of the greatest traps in relationships is becoming addicted to someone's potential. You see the version of them they could become. You imagine how amazing life would be if they finally appreciated you. You fall in love with possibilities instead of reality. But you cannot build a future with someone's potential. You can only build it with their present choices. People don't become different because you love them harder. They become different because they choose to grow. Growth cannot be forced. Respect cannot be begged for. Love cannot be negotiated. The sooner you accept that, the sooner your heart becomes lighter. There's a reason confident people appear so attractive. It's not because they're perfect. It's because they don't abandon themselves trying to keep someone else. Think about that. How many times have you ignored your own needs just to avoid upsetting another person? How many nights did you lose sleep wondering why they changed? How many mornings did you check your phone before even getting out of bed? How many happy moments were stolen because your mind was waiting for one notification? That's emotional dependence. And dependence quietly steals your freedom. Freedom begins the moment your happiness no longer waits for someone else's response. Imagine waking up excited about your own goals instead of worrying about someone else's silence. Imagine smiling because your life is full, not because someone finally texted back. Imagine walking into every room knowing your value without needing anyone to confirm it. That's real confidence. Confidence doesn't say, I hope you choose me. Confidence says, if you don't, I'll still be okay. That mindset changes everything because desperation pushes people away. Security attracts respect. When someone realizes you're no longer trying to convince them, something unexpected often happens. They become curious, not because you're playing games, because human nature notices change. The person who assumed you'd always be available suddenly realizes life continued without them. The attention they took for granted is no longer guaranteed. The emotional safety net they relied on has disappeared. Now they're left alone with something they've avoided for a long time, their own thoughts. Silence has a strange way of making people remember conversations they ignored. It reminds them of kindness they overlooked. It reminds them of loyalty they assumed would always be there. Sometimes absence teaches lessons that presence never could. But here's the important part. Don't let their curiosity become your weakness. Many people return for the wrong reasons. Not because they've changed, because they missed the comfort you provided. There's a difference. Missing your attention isn't the same as respecting your value. Missing your availability isn't the same as appreciating your heart. That's why boundaries matter. Boundaries don't keep love out. They keep disrespect out. A healthy person won't be offended by your standards. Only someone who benefited from your lack of them will complain. Never apologize for protecting your peace. The people meant for your life won't ask you to sacrifice your self-respect just to keep them comfortable. They'll meet you with honesty, with effort, with consistency, with care. Anything less should never become your normal. Remember this. You cannot heal in the same emotional environment that keeps hurting you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do isn't holding on. It's letting go. Not because you stopped caring, because you finally started caring about yourself too. The strongest comeback isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving to yourself that your life doesn't stop when one person walks away. It keeps growing. It keeps expanding. It keeps surprising you. And often, the greatest opportunities arrive only after you've stopped wasting energy knocking on doors that were never meant to open. Every day you spend chasing someone who doesn't value you is a day you're unavailable for the people, the purpose, and the future that will. Your story was never supposed to end with someone who couldn't recognize your worth. Your story becomes powerful the moment you recognize it yourself. And once that happens, you'll never again confuse someone's temporary attention with genuine love. The day you stop chasing is the day you stop negotiating your worth. That doesn't mean your heart stops feeling. It doesn't mean you suddenly forget the memories. It doesn't mean you become cold. It simply means you've decided that your peace matters more than your pain. There's a huge difference. Too many people believe strength is holding on no matter what. But sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to walk away from something that keeps asking you to sacrifice yourself. Love should never require you to lose your identity. The right relationship doesn't ask you to become smaller so someone else can feel bigger. It doesn't ask you to ignore your intuition. It doesn't reward your silence while punishing your honesty. Real love creates security, not confusion. If you constantly wonder where you stand, that's already your answer. People who truly value you don't leave you guessing every single day. They don't make affection feel like a prize you have to win. They make respect feel natural. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to understand someone who never took the time to understand you. Horrors of overthinking, ceaseless nights. Endless conversations with friends asking the same question. Why are they acting like this? But maybe you're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking why they're acting that way, ask yourself why you've accepted it for so long. That question changes everything because it shifts your focus from trying to control another person to improving your own life. You cannot control who appreciates you, but you can control who has access to you. You cannot force someone to communicate honestly, but you can refuse to stay where honesty doesn't exist. You cannot make someone recognize your value, but you can stop placing your value in their hands. That's where freedom begins. The people who command the most respect are rarely the loudest people in the room. They're the ones who know when silence says enough. Not every disappointment deserves a reaction. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every goodbye deserves another chance. Sometimes your silence is the clearest sentence you'll ever speak. When someone expects you to argue and you choose peace. When they expect you to chase and you choose dignity. When they expect you to beg and you choose self-respect. You've already won a battle they didn't even realize was happening. Because your greatest victory isn't changing their behavior. It's changing yours. There comes a moment when you realize you've been waiting for closure from someone who isn't capable of giving it. That's when you stop waiting. Closure isn't always something another person gives you. Sometimes it's a decision you make, a decision to stop rereading old conversations and a decision to stop checking whether they viewed your story, a decision to stop wondering who they're with, a decision to stop allowing the past to steal today. Every one of those choices returns a piece of your power. Little by little, your confidence starts coming back. You laugh more. You sleep better. You stop carrying emotional weight that never belonged to you. And one morning, something incredible happens. You wake up, and they aren't the first thing on your mind anymore. That's healing. Healing doesn't mean the memories disappear. It means they no longer control your emotions. You remember without breaking. You smile without pretending. You move forward without looking back every 5 minutes. That's real growth. Many people think the goal is to make someone regret losing them. But that's still giving another person control over your happiness. What if they never regret it? Will your life stay on pause forever? Of course not. Your future is too valuable to be held hostage by someone else's choices. Success isn't living well so someone feels guilty. Success is living well because you've finally chosen yourself. Never forget this, every relationship teaches you something. Some people teach you how to love. Others teach you what never to tolerate again. Both lessons are valuable. Pain has a purpose if you allow it to become wisdom instead of bitterness. Don't let disappointment convince you that everyone is the same. The wrong person can make you lose faith in love. The right mindset helps you regain faith in yourself. And once you trust yourself again, you're far less likely to settle for less than you deserve. One healthy relationship with yourself is worth more than 100 unhealthy relationships with people who only show up when it's convenient. Protect that relationship. Invest in it. Keep promises to yourself. Speak kindly to yourself. Celebrate your own progress. Stop waiting for applause from people who never appreciated your effort. The most important approval you'll ever receive is your own. Because when you genuinely respect yourself, your standards rise naturally. You stop chasing people who constantly disappear. You stop explaining your value to those determined not to see it. You stop shrinking just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Instead, you become comfortable being exactly who you are. That confidence is impossible to fake. People notice it, not because you're demanding attention, because you're no longer desperate for it. Ironically, the less you seek validation, the more respect you often receive. That's because confidence creates a quiet strength. It says, I know who I am. It says, I don't need to convince anyone. It says, if you choose to leave, I'll survive. And those words don't have to be spoken. They are reflected in your actions. Your peace becomes your message. Your discipline becomes your voice. Your self-respect becomes your reputation. Eventually, the person who ignored you may wonder what happened. They may notice your absence. They may even reach out. But by then, something much more important has happened. You've changed. You're no longer the person who confused attention with love. You're no longer the person who accepted breadcrumbs while hoping for a feast. You're no longer the person who begged for consistency. You've become someone who understands that love without respect is incomplete. Attention without effort is empty. Promises without action are meaningless. And relationships without trust can never become the safe place your heart deserves. Once you understand those truths, you'll never again allow anyone to make you question the value you already possess. Because your worth was never created by their attention. It existed long before they arrived, and it will continue to exist long after they're gone. Your greatest transformation begins the moment you stop waiting for someone else to recognize your value and start living as if you've known it all along. Think about how much of your life changes when your confidence no longer depends on one person's opinion. You walk differently, you speak differently, you make decisions differently. You stop asking, what if they leave? And you start asking, what kind of life do I want to build? That single shift changes your future. The truth is, the people who are hardest to replace are never the ones who beg to stay. They're the ones who knew when to leave with their dignity intact. Not because they stopped caring, because they refused to stop respecting themselves. There comes a time when every person must make a choice. You can spend your days trying to convince someone to love you, or you can spend your days becoming someone who never has to beg for love again. One path leads to exhaustion, the other leads to freedom. Choose wisely, because every day you spend chasing the wrong person is another day you're unavailable for the right opportunities waiting ahead. Imagine if all the energy you've invested in overthinking was redirected toward your dreams. Imagine if every tear became determination, if every disappointment became discipline, if every rejection became motivation to create a life so meaningful that your happiness no longer depended on who stayed and who left. That's how powerful your life can become. Pain doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can become the beginning of your purpose. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet weren't born confident. They became confident after surviving moments that nearly broke them. They learned that heartbreak doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. It shows you what still needs healing. It teaches you where your boundaries were missing. It reminds you that your heart deserves protection just as much as it deserves love. Never be ashamed of loving deeply. That's not your weakness. Your only mistake is giving endless chances to someone who repeatedly showed you they weren't willing to value what you offered. Kindness should never require self-sacrifice. Compassion should never mean abandoning yourself. Forgiveness should never mean accepting the same disrespect again and again. You can forgive someone and still decide they no longer belong in your life. Those two things can exist together. Forgiveness frees your heart, boundaries protect it. Learn the difference. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is becoming emotionally independent. That doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means your identity doesn't disappear inside your relationships. You continue growing. You continue learning. You continue building a life that excites you, whether someone applauds you or not, because confidence is built through promises you keep to yourself. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, every time you choose peace over unnecessary drama, every time you choose self-respect over temporary attention, you become stronger. Not overnight, but small choices create powerful lives. One healthy decision today becomes a habit tomorrow. That habit becomes your character, and your character becomes your destiny. Stop waiting for perfect timing. Stop waiting for perfect people. Stop waiting for someone else to make you feel complete. You were never incomplete. You simply forgot who you were while trying so hard to become enough for someone else. Your value doesn't increase because someone notices you, and it doesn't decrease because someone ignores you. A diamond remains valuable even if it's hidden underground. Its worth doesn't change because people fail to recognize it. Neither does yours. So don't waste your life trying to shine for people who choose to keep their eyes closed. Shine because that's who you are. Live with integrity because it brings you peace. Work on yourself because your future deserves the best version of you. Protect your energy because not everyone deserves access to it. Choose relationships where effort is mutual. Choose conversations where respect is natural. Choose friendships that celebrate your success instead of competing with it. Choose love that brings peace instead of constant uncertainty. The quality of your life is determined by the standards you refuse to lower. Never apologize for expecting honesty. Never apologize for expecting consistency. Never apologize for expecting respect. Those aren't unrealistic expectations. They're the foundation of every healthy relationship. And if someone calls you difficult because you have boundaries, remember this. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will often complain when you finally create them. Don't let that stop you. Growth makes some people uncomfortable, especially those who are comfortable with the old version of you. Keep growing anyway. Keep becoming wiser. Keep becoming calmer. Keep becoming stronger. One day, you'll look back at this chapter of your life and realize the person who ignored you accidentally gave you the greatest gift. They forced you to discover a strength you never knew you had. They pushed you toward a version of yourself that no longer settles for uncertainty. They reminded you that your peace is priceless. And once you've experienced that kind of peace, you'll never trade it for temporary attention again. So walk forward with confidence. Let your actions speak louder than your explanations. Let your silence protect your peace. Let your standards protect your heart, and let your future be built on self-respect instead of emotional dependence. Because the most powerful message you'll ever send isn't a text. It isn't a speech. It isn't an argument. It's the life you build after deciding that your happiness is no longer controlled by someone who failed to see your worth. The moment you truly understand that, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop proving. You stop settling. And that's the moment you become impossible to ignore. Not because you demanded attention, but because you finally realized you never needed it to know your worth. Thank you for listening. If these words spoke to your heart, carry them with you today. Choose yourself. Protect your peace. Build a life that reflects your value, and never let anyone convince you that you have to chase what is meant to freely meet you. Your best chapter doesn't begin when someone comes back. It begins the moment you come back to yourself.